Stay. Okay, today we're going to go from a bit of core awareness to how that helps support us in our poses. So we'll really find the core of the body, and then how it can really breathe out and lengthen into the distal points of the body. So we'll have a little play with that and see how that can offer you some support in your poses, or it can give you some exploration place in your practice, or just a bit more awareness of perhaps where you are actually holding some of your body tension. So let's begin. So, the first part of this kind of practice is feeling our way into the core, which we've done before, but sometimes it's really easy just to come into a bit of an X and feel like if you start to just bring everything into the center, what happens is you start to contract into the core. Can you feel how it flexes in the rest of your body? So you can just go through a few of these where you're in a little bit of an X. So you're trying to feel how you are a star shape. See if you can feel where your core is and how you slowly start to bring the elbows towards the knees, the head towards the spine. Can you feel that location? Another thing to do is to take one hand on the front and one hand on the back and see if you start to flex the body in, whether you can feel where that movement really initiates. So this is just a little bit of an exploration with your breath of inhale and exhale. And you can do it both ways. You can exhale as you contract into the center. You can inhale as you go out into that star shape, or just with the hands on your core. Or you can exhale as you go into the center, and then inhale, coming back out into that X. So if you find the hands useful, just keep that going. If it's too much strain on the neck, you can bring the hands to support your head while you do this. And you can do less. So less can be more. So you can go fully into bringing the elbows into the knees. Or you can just bend the knees a little bit and bring that head up, and then do you really feel that core? So I don't know about you, but I can feel I'm getting a slight workout already. So, maybe it's just less is more, and just a little flexion that way. Now you might notice you start to lead with the elbows, or you're leading with the knees. See if you can let the core do it, and then the elbows and the knees come towards each other. So we'll just do a few more like this, supporting the head, because there's something still very powerful about this pose. But you don't have to do quite as much movement. And I'm liking exhaling when I lean forward, but you can easily inhale as you come up, and then exhale as you extend out. And then just bring the hands down to your belly, it's kind of around the belly button or a little bit below, and just feeling the breath moving in and out of the core. Because a lot of times when we're trying to support from the core, we often use the shoulders, or we use the back muscles instead of the core muscles. So it's not about developing six-pack abs. It's just developing that core awareness and that core strength. So we're going to go into a lot of poses today by just going into that little bit of flexion to feel the core, and then extending out into poses. So bring the knees up And again, we can have the hands on the belly to do our simple pose of bending the knees and straightening out. And you can just see what happens in your core. If you want to feel more into your core, another option is hands under the head and just slightly lifting the head up. And then you really can feel a little bit more core awareness. So, or at least I do. Maybe you do. But you can also just simply have the hands down. And this activates more in the lower core. But if you lift the head up, you'll feel more of this part contract in the belly. And you can probably feel already the workout it gives you. And then just do 2 more, whichever way you're doing it. And then just bring the feet down. You can shake out a little bit. And then slide the feet down a little bit and see if you can do the wrap. If you can't do the wrap with the legs, you can keep the leg that's on top. So this is my right leg, and just flex the foot a little bit. I find it easier to wrap the legs when I'm on the mat, where I can really extend the legs. And we'll go into Guru Dasana, so this will take us even more intensely into the core. So now what we've done is we have really intensified the arms and the legs here as we bring the elbows in. And again, you can do this pose as less is more, and just a little bit lift with the elbows and the knees. Or you can bring the knees towards the elbows and make it a little more intense. So do what works for you. You can take longer breaks if it's too intense. You can, of course, just bend at the elbows and place the hands on the shoulders if it's hard for you to bring the arms around. So there's a couple of choices in this pose, but the full pose would be really, bringing those knees and the elbows toward each other. And then just do 2 more like this. But it can also be just the little ones. And then release that side. And it's nice to stretch out the arms and bring the feet together, knees wide, just to do kind of the opposite as we transition. And also it widens that whole pelvis and widens that belly out. And then bring the knees up and wrap around the other direction. And again, I find it's easier to do it if I lengthen my legs out and find that foot. So it's easier for me to do it lying down than standing. And then it'll be the opposite arm. So whichever leg is on top, that elbow comes underneath. Again, if you need to stay here with your arms, that's fine, or hands onto the shoulders. If you can do the full wrap around the arms, great. Again, you can start just with a little bit of movement, really feeling into that core. Or you can go more fully, bringing the knees and the elbows towards each other. And again, you can exhale as you do this, and then inhale. Or you could inhale as you bring it towards each other and exhale as you open. So doing the breath in either way will give you different information for your body. And then do 2 more, whichever way it works for you. release that side. And again, arms out to the side. You can bring the feet together. Open up the legs, just opening, widening here, just a couple of breaths here, and that's going to soften into the abdomen. And then we're just going to do a little bit of rolling to feel how your core connects here, but it's also going to engage some movement momentum. So if you can bend one shin in front of the other, you can actually wrap your fingers around the big toes and you just roll up. So again, this is connecting your head and your tail in, and you roll back and you roll up. When you come up, and the knees can be high, it's okay, wherever the knees are. See if you can feel that verticality that comes directly from your core support. And you're also doing a little gentle massage in your lower back. So the more momentum, the more I'm going to roll back and forward. But you can make this as slow as you want, or you can really get a little bit of back massage in it. But I don't know if you can feel how, in order to roll more gently on your body, you really need to allow the core abdominals to support you. And there's a lot of gut and visceralness in here that really supports you. It's not just muscular. And here the momentum helps with the movement, but it also helps you feel, hopefully, that head to tail connection. So we've done it a few times with this leg crossed. So then go back and switch legs and do it a few more times. Just feeling how it rolls you up onto those sit bones and back. And you can be as gentle as you want in this. And you can go more and keep that curve going to really help gain momentum if you'd like. And then you're sitting now, and see if you can bring the feet wherever it's comfortable. Like you can still have them crossed over, or if it's easier for you to bring them a little wider or the feet up, you can actually, let's all do this. So have your shins in front of you, and you just do this gentle C curve rolling up, so you really can feel into that. Where is that core in your body? So it's like a gentle C curve contraction, and then extending and feeling how you're rooted onto those sit bones, head, tail here. And that'll help us as we go into some more complex standing poses. But we might as well come over onto all four. And again, this time as we go into cat and dog, you can feel the core going both directions. So we'll just round the spine into that C curve, and then round into the opposite direction that is a little bit of a C curve as well. The head goes up, tail goes up. And we're just trying to bring the breath in and the fluidity of the spine, so we don't become too rigid when we think of core support. It's more like we have this river in our spine that helps us keep the flow going in the spine and the space between the vertebrae. And that if we use the core, it'll help us with that fluidity. And bring the spine back to neutral. And then when you tuck your toes, see if you can feel as if somebody's got their hand on your belly and on your sacrum here. And see if you can feel that just lift you up. And then come back down to hands and knees. And then see if you can there's just a gentle lift in the abdominals, and feel into the whole pelvis structure. See if you can just aim those sit bones way up to the ceiling, and then come back down. And we'll do it this way a couple more times. So you've got the toes tucked under, really lift a little bit in those abdominals, and then imagine the pelvis just pulling you up and then bringing you down. And 2 more from the core. It pulls you up, brings you down, and it pulls you up and brings you down. And 1 more, pulls you up and then walk the feet towards the hands if you can. And maybe you feel how that does connect you into the core. And put a hand on your belly and a hand on your lower back sacrum, and then slowly come up to standing. And then see if you can, feel how that core is right in here. And then we're going to stand in Tadasana with soft knees and feel how we can roll a little C curve, a little softness, and then lengthen through the spine, and see if you can feel how what helps you unfurl in this is the core. So it's like you just do a little roll, this little soft head C curve with a little softness in the legs, and then you slowly push up from the feet, but then you lengthen head to tail, and see if you can feel that core support. We're going to try to add the arms here. What happens when we do that little roll? So you're in the C curve. What happens if we inhale, bring the arms up? You feel that, and just soften this time your arms down when you do that roll, so they're just soft and they hang. And then as you roll up, really lifting those arms. And then what happens when you C curve and you let everything sort of flex into you. And then 1 more. And just let it exhale and fold into you. Now we're going to keep those knees soft again and go into Utkatasana from here. So see what happens when we try to go into powerful pose here. So you're soft, you've got that roll, And then what happens when you lift your arms up and you flex more from that space? So you come into Utkatasana from that C curve. And then soften the legs again. You got the C curve. So you're much more soft here and fluid. I'm just bouncing a little bit to just demonstrate you've got some more softness here. And then go into that Utkatasana. And then exhale and let it all fold in and soften. And then unfurl again. Maybe it's unfurling like a fern with a little bit of quickness. And then softening it. A little bit of C curve. And then coming back into Utkatasana. Powerful pose. And then just softening that again. And go into a little C curve. And then just see if you can come up into standing in Tadasana. And just take a minute to notice how you're feeling. What's the relationship in your feet, your ankles, your heels, your pelvis, your rib cage, your shoulders. So we're going to try to go into some standing poses through this C curve softness so you can feel into your core support that extends you out. So, or I should say other standing poses, because those were standing poses too. I don't know why I always categorize the legs wide standing poses as standing poses. Because I'm standing, so it's a standing pose. Anyway, so you're going to round into that softness. And as you do that, how can you start to slowly bring the legs out wider so you still have that softness? And we're going to come into triangle pose this way, where you still have that softness, that little bit of C curve in the legs. And then you slowly start to extend from the core out to the fingertips, out to the legs. So at this point, I'm not putting my hands on my legs. And then what happens when you soften in again to that core and come through the center and come to the other side where you're still softening into that C curve, lining your feet up perhaps, that's a good start, and then slowly extend through the arms and the legs and the feet. See if you can find this way of doing triangle. And then again, softening back through the legs, bringing the feet closer together in that little C curve, and then extending and lengthening through the head and the tail, just standing. And then we're going to try it into, my computer just did something dodgy. It put something up, so I've got to exit out. Oh, this is annoying. Oh, yeah. You never know what's going to happen on your computer in the middle of something. Anyway, so now we're going to go into Warrior Two pose this way. So see if you can soften into the center, into that C curve. So it's just that gentle C, head, tail towards each other. And then we'll start to bring the legs out wider and setting the feet up. So you've got one foot out, pivoting the other foot in. So you're sort of hanging out where you feel the core. And then see if you can slowly extend out from the core to be in this pose, into Warrior Two pose. Feel the edges fingertips and your feet and your head and your tail. And then what happens is you soften it all in again, and then go to the other side. So it may be easier just to set up your feet, a bit of softness with a bit of flexion. And then what happens when you go from your core and extend through the bend in the front leg and through the fingertips. So you're extended through the toe tips, fingertips. Into Virabhadrasana 2. And then slowly soften it again into the core, bringing the feet in. And then you can lengthen through the head and the tail into Tadasana. And then just take a few, I don't know how long, a little bit to notice. What do you notice about your breath? What do you notice about your heartbeat? And what do you notice in your core? Is there an ease? Is there a tension? Are you feeling something in your shoulders? Just notice what you feel. There's no right or wrong. This is just an experiment. Think of this as practiced and not perfect. And again, soften into that C curve and softening those knees as we again go out into a similar position with the feet for Parsvakonasana. So we're softening into that core to feel where the movement originates into the core. And then how do we lengthen ourselves into Parsvakonasana through the core. Now, of course, you can have your arms somewhere else. It's fine if you don't want to totally extend through the arm. And then again, to come out, you just start to soften towards the core, getting into that C curve. And then the feet, you probably want to find stability in the feet first. And you're still softening with a little C curve. And then slowly find that extension where the pose extends all the way from the foot out the fingertips. And then again, softening into the core. Bringing the feet around. Slowly then extending into head and tail, into Tadasana. Again, noticing how you feel. So I'm going to turn this way just so you can see the pose easier, but again, you yourself can stay where you are. You just want to have enough space for your legs and arms in this pose. So we're going to go into Virabhadrasana 3 this way. So see what happens when you try to go into the pose this way. Because we can go into a pose in so many different ways. So we soften into that C curve. And if it helps you, you can bring your arms in a little bit. You're going to slowly try to extend through the legs and the arms at the same time into Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3 pose. And then come out, you slowly soften back in. And then slowly come up into standing. And might make the pose more challenging, or maybe there'll be some ease in it. I don't know. We get used to how we go into a pose, and sometimes we build tension patterns around that. So it's always useful to experience poses in different manners. So now again, soften the knees, go into a little C curve, and see what happens on the other side. And one side might be easier than the other. And of course, you can always keep the hands on the pelvis if it just gives you more balance. And then you can soften everything in to that C curve coming up to standing. And again, just notice what you notice. I don't know about you, but right now I've got more awareness in the top of my head, which I find really curious. And I'm not suggesting that you need that. It's just that's just what happened for me. So, and as I suggest, there's so many ways to go into poses. We're going to come down onto our belly a little bit and just feel what it's like to try to do this and go into, it's plank pose, but it's the low plank or half plank pose. So how I think the best way to start it is we bring everything close to each other in that C curve. And maybe if you want to interlock the fingers just to give you some stability in the upper body. So you feel that C curve here. And then what happens if you engage the body by lifting the biceps, and then you extend one leg and then the other. See how that might work for you in this pose. And then you just bend everything into that C curve. Maybe for the next one you want to try the hands out wide. And bringing the knees a little bit further in helps with that C curve. And then you can bring one leg back and then the other and extend through the tailbone and the head. And then bring the knees in and the body in. You're in this C curve. And then come up into full plank by putting the hands down, but just softening into that C curve. And then what helps to, and of course you can practice this in a few ways. You can bring one leg first, and then maybe stabilize through the arms, and then the other leg, then the head and the tail. I don't know, I haven't really found a way that I suppose you could jump into it. So you can play with that if you feel that you've got the power and the strength today. You can go directly from being in that C curve, arms soft, and jumping back and coming back in. So that's one way to do it. Or if you want a little easier way, extend one leg. Feel how that comes out of the core. Extend the other leg. Straighten the arms. And lengthen the head and the tail. And then to come out, you can bring one leg in, then the other, and soften the arms. And then if you can sit on your feet, and not everybody can, if you have to add something underneath, you can. And just feel what it feels like. And you can add more height than this. I just added what was next to me. I think I've left some of the other pillows I used. And just notice your core, your head, tail, and take a notice into your shoulders, what's happening in your shoulders. I can still feel my heart beating, so that was a little bit of, strong core work. And then for the last pose, I want you to go into that C curve to find your way into whatever you decide to do. If you decide to come down, going through that C curve, and the easiest way to go into lying in Shavasana is to be on your side like so, and keeping that flexion, and then slowly rolling over, finding that extension, going into that X again, and then you can just bring the arms down for Shavasana. I have the blanket here. Or if you feel like you need a little inversion, you can use your chair to put your feet up on your chair, something under your pelvis. Whatever you've got at hand, get yourself into that Shavasana, or just that quieter space. So as you settle into whichever pose you're in, I want you to just notice what's happening in the core, in the center of your body. Perhaps you take your awareness into your tailbone and then all the way up to your head. How does the space between the tail and the head feel at the moment? Just noticing. And then perhaps you can allow the breath to really move in that space. So when you inhale, the space between the head and the tail, it's a little bit lengthened, and when you exhale, it all softens in towards the center. And notice your pelvis and how your legs extend from the pelvis, or perhaps soften in towards the pelvis. Notice your rib cage. What's the movement in the rib cage? Front of the ribs, side of the ribs, back of the ribs. And then your shoulder girdle. What's the movement or the sensation in your shoulder girdle? So your upper chest and sternum, plus your shoulder blades, plus the collarbones that run out to your shoulders. And then how do your arms down to your fingertips flow? Or is there a softening back from your fingertips into the shoulder area, the shoulder girdle? And then just notice your throat and neck, how it connects to your head, your ears, your face. And see if you can notice your breath in your nostrils. As the cool air comes in and the warm air moves out of your nostrils. And then slowly begin to reawaken your body. Maybe you just begin to feel the fluidity of your whole body, beginning a little bit of movement. Just stretch out, finding that head and tail, finding the core as you roll over and come up to sitting. Remember, your core has a lot to do with the fluidity in your spine and the fluidity of being able to really extend with your breath and really contract as you exhale, or either way with the breath. So perhaps having days where you imagine yourself like a starfish might give you some imagery to play with. So have a beautiful day or night, and namaste. Oh, the blessings of the tropics.